How's everyone doing this morning? Nice. Cool. Man, I had a lot more people sign up, so maybe some people will show up late. But either way, it's all blessed and all good. I'm giving thanks. Let's see. Today's class is called Growing Food in Hawaii 101. Basics of growing food in Hawaii. Once again, to reiterate the reason for July's courses, it was called Surviving and Thriving in a Brave New World was the theme of this month's classes. So my goal was that if someone came to all the classes, they would be equipped to survive on their own. If anything got weirder than it already is. So, you know, the first class was about microbes, was about understanding the function of bacteria, viruses, and fungi. Come on in, you can bring a chair that way. There's more room over there. There's a couple empty seats here. You could, if you're more comfortable, you could take that chair around there if you want. And then there's also chairs if more people come from the deli. But the viruses, funguses, and bacteria, understanding how they function on an elementary level, kind of empowers you to make more informed decisions when it comes to scientists and doctors talking about those kind of things. And then the next class we had was with John Balloon and myself, and we talked about nutrition, what it takes to survive in a polluted world, and we talked about GMOs, what Roundup really does, all that kind of good stuff or bad stuff brought into light to make it good, because you got the power to know about it. And then this class today is just your hands-on growing food class. After we're done with this short presentation, it's going to take about an hour or so. We're going to go outside, and you probably saw walking up the prep work that was done out here. And if you remember before, this was just like a hedge of ferns that were like had some thick roots, like that thick. And me and Angelo got that prep for today's class just to show you guys basic garden bed setups. And then I'm going to go over here. We're going to do basic orchard setups, basic food forest setup, and food patch setups. And so we're going to break all those down, and just the way that you could have success doing this and making the farming fun and successful. Therefore, you're not stressed out and worried about weeds, and it's not like this burden thing that all of a sudden becomes something that you're not enjoying. So we're going to get started with that. And you guys ready? Cool. I was going to read a scripture quote before I got started just to kind of prime the mind. Maybe let me pull that up real quick. The scripture quote right here. Correct a mocker and you make an enemy. Rebuke a wicked man and you get an insult in return. Do not rebuke the mocker. He will only hate you. Rebuke a wise man and he will love you for it. Be open with the wise. He grows wiser still. Teach a virtuous man. He will learn yet more. The fear of the Most High is the beginning of wisdom. The knowledge of the Holy One, perceptions indeed. For days are multiplied by me, and years of life increased. Are you wise? It is to your advantage. A mocker? The burden is yours alone. So I was reading that. It just made a lot of sense to go over that quote in class. And just implying, like, you know, keep a wise mind and an open mind. And a wise man or woman is okay with debate and reasoning. And is okay with others' opinions and growing their mental and spiritual and physical realities. So I just wanted to share that. Growing Food in Hawaii 101. The goal number one today and of farming in general is what? Feed thyself. Feed thyself and your family. The abundance you sell or trade or give away to your community. And so if each one of us become our own food hub, then just between this community right here, there's abundance beyond what we could share together. So we could basically feed like hundreds of people just out of ourselves in this classroom. So it multiplies very quickly. What's up, my brother?
If we jumped in?
Yeah, of course. Probably grab a chair, pull it up. There's, what's up, bro? And there's more chairs too outside at the deli you can grab. And then this one, yeah, pull it around there. There's sometimes people tuck in back there too, if you guys want to tuck in over there, wherever you're comfortable though. So yeah, feeding the self is the goal. The key to success of farming in Hawaii in particular that I've found is crop selection. The crop selection is key. Yes, Garnet. You guys can grab more chairs from the deli. Yeah, grab some of those for me. Cody can get more from that room too. And then you guys, there's room over here in the corner back here too if you guys want to crowd in over here. Crop selection. So you're at a 1,500 to a 2,000 foot elevation here, and you're trying to grow cucumbers. Is it gonna work? Most likely not. You're trying to grow crookneck squash. Is it gonna work? Most likely not. It can work with a lot of human intervention and a lot of effort on your part and unnecessary work. But the thing is, we're gonna select crops that grow proper in our region and be okay with the food that is provided to us from those crops. So have you ever seen a kalo plant that's not growing well? It's like pretty much unheard of to see a kalo plant not growing well. They're made for this climate. They were evolved in this climate, hybridized crop, whatever. It all sprang forth from this earth, you know. So it's perfect for it. Bananas. I mean, there's the bunchy top virus and whatnot, but in general, there's nothing that bothers them. Tea leaf, you know, all these things are just kind of living and growing abundantly. Sweet potatoes, breadfruit trees, you know, they're all pretty resistant in the right climate. So crop selection is going to be key. If you're going to grow European vegetables in Hawaii, you're going to have to work at it. And you're hopefully at a low enough elevation where you can do it successfully. Food patch. So sustainability equals sustenance. So your ability to produce sustenance is going to be your equation of how much sustainability that you can produce in your life. So sustenance equals sustainability. So when people talk like, oh yeah, I want to live this sustainable lifestyle, I got my solar and da-da-da, and then I go to the grocery store every day. Like, that's not super sustainable in the long term, you know. So we're looking sustenance equals sustainability, and you can see that root word, the sust, in there, you know, showing you that they're related. Again, this is just some general tips for growing food in Hawaii. We're going to get deep into everything here in a second. Native indigenous farming. So Hawaii had and still has the potential for one of the, if not the most advanced, civilized, best food growing systems on the planet Earth. And that's called the Ahupua'a system. What does that word break down to, do you know?
No, not offhand.
Okay, good, think about that one. But anyway, what you see here is a mountain rainforest where you get plenty of rain, and the water is directed and channeled most naturally, and then you could use man-made divergence, like you see ponds, and then you finally get down to these lo'i patches, which are the old taro wetland patches. And through here you got these dryland forest trees, bananas, you know, you got your fruit trees, your breadfruits, and when you get down, so everything is grown with this in mind, crop selection for the region. So you're not gonna, like, you're not planting papayas up here. You know, the papayas are planted here, you know, and the bananas are planted here, you know, and you're using these for resources, for mycorrhizae and inoculants and They used bird feathers to show, to put in the capes to show royalty. There's different resources they got from the rainforest all the way down to here, where basically some of the cleanest water in the world dumped into the ocean. A little different than our system. So I'll explain that real quick, is that scientists have found that in these patches are heavy metal eating, negative bacteria eating, pathogenic eating microbes. So the low E's were full of positive IMO, indigenous microorganisms. And basically what would happen is the water would run in here, so it's always moving, so it's oxygenated. And then it comes and it rests in these low E patches, and it sits. And then the sun hits it, and the sun's a purification agent. So the sun is hitting it, purifying the water. And it's at the exact depth, like the science is so perfect, and that basically once that sun starts warming it up, all the heavy metals, anything, sediment, anything that's negative in there settles to the bottom. And what you have above it is some of the most purified, high-grade water that you could drink. So this isn't confirmed science, but some people are saying that these were also drinking water patches and ways to filter the water. And then even to collect it after that would be even cleaner and more inoculated with positive microbials and probiotics and whatnot. So what I'm trying to do is just open your mind to that these systems were in place on a whole, like a web, not just a linear thing of food production to grocery store to body, but it was the whole thing was considered every animal, plant, microbe, living being, etc. More on the Ahupua'a system, cloud forest, fern forest, and it breaks it down. You guys could Google Ahupua'a if you want to read this broken down more. They even got it where they had sacred sites throughout, so like a kapu on a certain plant or something wasn't just like a rule, like how we have laws that don't make sense. Every kapu made sense. So it was, you don't touch the certain plant in this time of year because we're letting it grow back, because in the next time of year that's going to be our food source. So it wasn't just laws to control man, but it was laws to help ecology function properly for our survival. So what's really cool is that we don't need to look far for that surviving in the brave new world here that we're living in. It was less than 120, 150, maybe 200 now, that the people were just living in pure abundance, pure health, and we're here on the same island. So they tried to poison it, but you can't poison everything, We still got hope. We still got hope, and that's the thing. It's like we're on kind of the precipice right now of ecosystems, with the Ohia death, and we're on this precipice now of 20 years ago, oh, we got time, we can fix it, but now we're like at this time where it's yo, man, we got to take some action. Like these forests are dying, the general health of the human population is low, immune systems are low, mental capacity is low, and that all reflects nature. It's a complete, exact, symbolic relationship with how nature is treated, is the way the human is treated. And we know that nature is what? Nature is mother, right? It's the feminine quality. It's the receiver. It receives the light. It receives the seed and grows the baby. It's the mother. So we can see throughout history, cultures that treated the empress or the mother properly also treated the land properly. And cultures that disregard the mother or disregard the empress's qualities is going to have the same reflection in the earth. And you can see that one-to-one no matter where you go. So let's get into this here. Gardening basics. One time a mechanic told me, he goes, He goes, a car just needs air, fuel, water, fuel, air, water, spark, right? Right, 4 things, right? So you can apply that same thing to a plant, you know? It's the same thing basically. You got your air, you know, you got your fuel, your water, and your spark. You know? How does a car run? Well, no one can make a car unless they mimic nature to see how to design that car, you know? Nobody can make anything unless they mimic nature. If you look at a cell under a microscope, there's literally like tractors on there, like moving around and stuff, like things with shovel heads on there inside the cell. A tiny thing. There's little shovel-headed things moving around, and there's a capacity generator over here sparking electricity, and like there's literal like machinery, if you want to call it that, in each and every tiny cell. So all man can do is mimic nature's systems. So if you have an easier time of understanding how a car works, well, just apply it to how a plant works. And then when you go to plant your garden, you got to keep this in mind. You just check your boxes. Okay, is this a good spot for my garden? How's the airflow? Okay, yeah, I got air movement. Okay, what's my light? Like, I'm going to watch the light for the next 24 hours and see how it tracks across my sky, because I want to see if I'm getting adequate sunlight where I want to plant my garden. Because a lot of these things, if they get overlooked, you're going to spend all that time building your garden, and then you're going to go, what happened, bro? I did everything the teacher told me, but something came out wrong. Like, oh, well, you only had 2 hours of sunlight hitting your crop, and the rest of it was in shade, and it just didn't work, you know? So you got to be aware of those kind of things. Water, by this one, is not only rain, because you could have a covered system too, like a greenhouse or a hoop house. But where are you getting your water from? Are you using a lot of energy to transport your water, and those kind of things? So this is more of a it's a geological thing, but it's also a planning thing, the water. And then your food. So your foods come down to you know, like this is some FAA that I made. I brought a bunch of these today to show you guys, and this is the Korean natural farming, making your own food. But food comes in many ways, in biomass, in compost, in cover crop seeds, in dry fertilizers, and crumbles fertilizers, or you could make your own food sources.
Did you say FAA?
Yeah, so this is the FAA, the fish amino acid. If you look at all those papers over there, that has all the recipes, the 9 core recipes, and this is one of them. Next month, August, we're going to have a 2-weekend K&F course again. And the second half will be heavily about cannabis farming and using K&F in cannabis and the best practice in growing cannabis. That'll be for August. But when I reference K&F today, just kind of keep it in mind, and you know, you can look at these papers when we have a break, and just kind of keep in mind that there's 9 core elements, and it covers every fertilization need that you need. So you're not going to need to buy anything from the store once you know how to make those 9 core solutions. All right, so any questions so far about just what we've talked about? Yeah, it's all good. Okay, so location, once again, sun, air. Usually a general rule for your garden is south facing. So if you watch the sun, like the sun in Hawaii, and here in Kona, comes up over the mountain and it sets on the ocean. And it's going to do that until you die, or when your next generation comes, and in 1,000 generations from now. It'll still just move like this. And in the summertime, it's right back here.
Yeah.
In the winter time, it goes until it's right over here. And then you're getting that sunlight from that angle, depending on where it's coming from. And that's all we get in Hawaii, is that. We get summertime here, wintertime here. In the mainland, they get a way more broad thing going on. You know, they got summertime peaking, Wintertime wait just a couple hours maybe, depending if you go further north you get no hours of during the winter, you know, because the sun is here. Like here's the earth, it's only going like that, where we got it here. So we only got this 30-degree kind of thing. So we get good sun all year round, basically is what I'm trying to say. But what you want to do is plan your garden. So if I'm your house, you know, you don't want to put your garden back here, you know, because it's going to be blocked most of the year by your house. So that's what I'm saying when you're picking your location. Does everyone understand that concept? Yeah. South facing, that's an old farmer's almanac, just like a general rule of farming. Because that's the most sun exposure you're going to get. Beds. So there's many types of beds that you can choose from. There's raised beds like we're going to go over today, which can be as easily as picking up some old logs out of the forest and shaping them up, grabbing some rocks and shaping them up in whatever shape you want. It could be banana stumps chopped up and put around. We're going to later on go set up these ohia planks that a guy came up and milled and chipped a bunch of ohia, so I had a bunch of planks left over. And it can be about anything that can hold soil. There's the Hugo Culture, which is kind of more teaming up with nature and bringing in elements of nature. Like, so you could have a section of your yard that you actually want to build a berm of life, and it's going to be like just a life-giving berm that you're going to plant perennials into, and food forest and different food patch type stuff. And this is like an exaggerated one, and Hugo Culture comes from Europe, and that's one of the old natural farming techniques we get from Old World Europe, called the Hugo Culture. And what you got here is carbon sink with your big logs, rounds, maybe some green wood in here too, leaves, wood chips, and then they got a layer of soil, and then they do their cover crop and they're planting into that. And you can see they got a fruit tree in there as an anchor, and kind of it's all feeding that tree as well as you're getting these fruits and vegetables out of the mound. And that's exaggerated. That could be anything from, you know, just a few feet off the ground like that, but it could also be a huge hill like that, you know, just depending on your situation and the materials you have. And the next photo shows that tree roots growing longer. And you can kind of see how, you know, all this life that's started surrounding this mound. You're creating habitat, more or less, and habitat brings balance. So your plants are going to grow good, and we get way more into that in the K&F course. But as an example, that's another thing you could plant in your yard, and of course use your imagination. And you know, we're going to use stuff that we have available on our farm to make that. Any questions about the Hugo Cultures? Bags and pots. So this is about your easiest way to do a raised bed. And you can use like a smart pot, you know, those fabric pots, you know, that's your most ideal if you're going to set up a living soil bed, which I recommend. And that's why I put this. You need at least a 100-gallon smart pot, minimum, to do a living bed that's going to sustain itself and keep itself alive. The wall style gardens, where you can set up A-frames and put like gutters down the sides of the A-frame, fill them with soil, drill holes. And that's kind of just another way to save space. Not my favorite, but space saving. Basically, just trying to show you there's a lot of options to grow easy vegetables at your house. Food forests and orchards we'll get into more in a minute. Number 3, soil. So we'll talk about soil here for a second. Guess that doesn't want to play. Oh, it's playing. I used to have like a soil business that I had for a minute when I'd make my own soil on my land. And right here I'm just loading someone up. But living soil is different than just regular old soil. How Elaine Ingham says, she says you sweep dirt off the floor. Soil is alive. So we don't deal with dirt, we deal with soil. And by that, it has living microorganisms, it has organic matter, it has your tilth, your sand, your sediment, and all that good stuff. This is an IMO4 pile that we were making at a client of mine's house. And I was just showing it off. You can barely see some of the mycorrhizae already growing in there. And we got the thermometer checking the temperature, and that's an IMO4 pile. So.
You guys use dog food, the Drake style?
No, I don't recommend that one. No. But during the KNF class, we'll explain all of that stuff, though, of what materials to use and why Drake thinks he can use dog food. Soil, living soil is key. Living soil is the key to your success. So you got bag soil straight from the store. Don't plan on succeeding. You might succeed 1 round or 2 rounds, but don't plan on like that soil being living and giving. It's going to be a shock and awe kind of soil, you know. You're gonna plant your first round of cannabis or your transplanted greens or whatever, and they're gonna go boom, and they're gonna look good, and you're gonna harvest, and then you're gonna try to do it again, and it's not gonna give you any results that you want, you know. And that's the difference between living soil and bag soil from the store. You can take bag soil from the store and keep it alive. So living soil, what I want you guys to imagine is, I want you to imagine your soil is another animal on your farm. So you can't not give your dog water, right? You give your dog water every day, right? Or yeah, hopefully you are anyway. And you're cleaning the thing in between rounds, right? And you're feeding your dog every day. If you had pigs on your farm, you wouldn't just let them sit there for 2 weeks and not go check them out, right? You'd have to constantly make sure they're okay, the rain's not getting in there, stuff's not, you know? So same with your soil. You got to treat it like it's alive. And living soil is moist soil. Your soil dries out, your microbes either die or go dormant. So you gotta think about this too. Microbes are water, like they need water to live and move. So if your soil is not moist, and we're talking moist, like these are microscopic, so they can swim through moisture in your soil. If your soil is not moist, they don't have any way to move, mobilize, reproduce, do their metabolic transfers of nutrients and all that good stuff. So the key to living soil is moisture. The key to moisture is mulch, right? Mulch is key for living soil. Another key to keeping moisture on that top layer is cover crop. So there's something magical about plants, like once they start gelling together and start living in a symbiotic relationship, for some reason they either attract or exude or secrete, but the moisture stays in the soil longer. It like seems contradictory that it would be sucking more soil out, but if you got a nice cover crop, it keeps that soil and that rhizosphere nice and moist. Pretty interesting to witness. Keys to living soil are worm castings. This is a worm bin, easy style worm bin. Next month also we're gonna have a compost tea and a worm farm and compost tea class next month. But this is a basic worm bin, an old bathtub with a drain. See, it already has a perfect slope if you make it on a level surface. So your drain will go into your bucket. You'll collect your worm juice, which isn't worm pee like people say. It's actually just plant decayed juice that's been eaten by microbes and purified. It has a neutral odor, no smell to it. That tells you got a good worm juice. But anyway, this is where you can compost your kitchen scraps, so you're not wasting anything or throwing unnecessary things in the landfill. And this is just a little dive into the worm bin here. See some of these guys going off. Peel it back. Yeah, so they do their thing in there. And they eat something crazy like something like 5 times their body weight a day. So they eat fast. And if you get like a few of these things going on your land, then you'll have somewhere to pour all your waste product, and also don't have to worry so much about. What's cool about KNF, worm casting, farming, composting, is that so when an apple tree puts on apples, it's not like, oh, I can't wait to feed all the humans, even though I bet it does rejoice in that. But it's really, those are all like the food that's going to feed it for its next cycle. Once they drop and ferment and turn to vinegar and turn to alcohol and tincture herbal plants that are around it, just like the KNF cycle. Every plant does that cycle on its own. So that's what's so cool. Yeah, so you don't got to have so much anxiety, because you can go collect those rotting fruits and make an FPJ. You can leave them be and let them feed the mycology around the plant. You know, there's rotting fruit is just a good thing. It's a positive thing for the environment. You can collect it for FPJs, and you can also collect them like sometimes I'll just take a whole banana rack that I didn't get to and it's starting to turn, and just shake the whole thing off right into the worm bin, and just, you know, and now they got food for months to eat while you're just doing your life, you know. So it's a great thing. They work. Really it's about having systems work for you while you're not working, you know, or while you're doing other important work, you know. But while you sleep, they're digesting. So I've heard a worm farmer say, these are my best employees, you know. They don't complain, they work super hard, they're always doing their job, they just want a little food, you know. So there's anytime you can incorporate worms, or even if you know how to do animal husbandry and incorporate like ducks to eat weeds and to eat slugs and stuff, you know, these are all positive things, you know what I mean? And really, if real quick to go back to pre-Hawaii, before even human contact, there was all kinds of these flightless birds, right? The flightless birds had beaks like kind of like turtles or something, you know? So they would eat all the understory but leave the native plants, you know? So as soon as all the flightless birds were gone, there was nothing to attack these invasive plants that were coming in to keep them at bay. You know what I mean? So yeah, you know, once you destroy one part of the ecosystem, and I was just made me think of that, that's just getting animals to work for you, where the natural cycle already had all the animals in place to keep the thing clean and nice, you know. It's just we kind of disturbed that. But I saw this one guy, he brought in land tortoises, and he would section them off on his farm, and they would only target the invasives too. They wouldn't eat the natives, so he started a native forest in his yard, and then he would put these land tortoises. And the thing about the tortoise is they have a beak, you know, so they're not like, they don't have teeth, or they don't like undulants where they rip stuff. So the tortoises would graze just like those ancient birds would. Anyway, it just made me think of that, utilizing animals beneficially and easily. You know, the worms are crucial. Yeah, there's something else about the worms, but it'll come back to me. Yeah, so next month we're going to do that worm class and talk about compost teas and different recipes. And compost in general is really easy to keep a compost bin in your yard. You could even just take a piece of wire fence and make a hoop and just start filling it with compost. Dry and wet material, try to keep it layering. It's not super important, like you just keep throwing stuff in there, it'll break down on its own. Any more questions about the 1 through 3 so far? Okay, number 4, natural farming and permaculture. So these are just different things to keep in mind. The KNF supplements, the mulching, the cover cropping. If you get into permaculture, there's a lot more technicals, a lot more different techniques and words that mean stuff like swales and carbon sinks, and different ways to direct and catch water. Like so a swale would be, you got a slope like this coming on your farm, and then you build up a berm around the base so you're not losing all your water, and it's catching into the swale, and then you plant here and you're catching all your water to feed. So it's just different techniques to keep a natural cycle going and not have to put sprinklers out there, not have to, you know, so we're working with nature, and instead of trying to fight it and create our own environment, we're gonna work with what we already have. So on my farm at 2,000 feet, it's gonna look like a lot different than a farm at 1,300 feet, you know? And that farm's even gonna look different than one down by the ocean, you know? So we need to just keep these things in mind. We can make our own fertilizers. We don't have to buy anything from a farm store again in our lives. We can start collecting cover crop seeds from our land, different things that we know grow well in nitrogen fix. We're gonna get into cover crops more here in a second. We can start using, you buy a small wood chipper, or even just get a nice sharp machete and start making mulch on your own property out of things in your yard. All right, let's see how we're doing on time here. At the time?
11:06.
Okay, cool. Yeah, we're probably gonna do this till, I think, what did I say, 11:30 or something? And then we're gonna get out there. I wanna try to get some work done before lunch break so we're not all tired after. But we'll see how it goes. We'll go with the flow. Garden bed setup. So can you guys all see this? Can you guys see over there? But anyway, it's just a diagram of how we're gonna do it out here live, but I wanted to show you ahead of time so you see it in this style too. Oh, here's some. This is like those are all buckets of FAA in my yard right there. So that's like basically at this point, I'll get at least a couple calls a month from fishermen. Hey, bro, you want my fish guts? You know. So what this does, like the KNF, when you're practicing these skills, it brings you closer to your community, and it brings you closer to the resources available around you. And like my brethren that's into KNF, he'll call it when he was first getting, where do I get bones, bro? I need dry bones to roast, you know, to make the WCP, the water-soluble calcium. And I was like, man, like that's part of the thing. Like that's part of the journey. Like if I told you where to go, it's kind of hindering your whole growth experience, you know? And so I just gave him a few pointers, like go to South Point, get out of your car, walk around in the pastures. And guaranteed you'll find an old skeleton somewhere, you know? Talk to some ranchers. Make friends with some ranchers. They got dead bones everywhere, all over the ranch, you know? So that's what when you get into these things, it just makes you like tap back into nature and tap back into to self-reliance and empowers you to provide for yourself instead of take the easy route of going to buy something from the store, which is about 1/5 of the quality of something that you could prepare yourself for just a little bit of effort. A banana rack that was going bad, and I decided to make an FPJ out of it, fermented plant juice. So it's just brown sugar coating the chopped up banana, let it sit 3 to 7 days, strain it, and now I got my plant juice, my food to feed my microbes. Super basic, super easy.
I have a quick question.
Yeah.
Because I'm just learning all about the different plant foods.
Mm-hmm.
I saw something in the KNF book, you know, the orange one?
Yeah.
It was talking about using specific foods for specific crops. So like sweet potato for sweet potato?
Yeah, it's a good rule of thumb. Same crop for same crop is a good rule of thumb for FPJ and also for mulching. So say you have an avocado tree, well the best thing to mulch the avocado tree is with avocado branches, you know, and yeah, usually, so check it out. When a plant uptakes nutrients, where do they go? Where does it go? Right. I mean, does it disappear into the air eventually? It's trapped now in the structure of the plant, right? So everything that it sucked out of the soil is now somewhere in the stratus of the plant. So in order to return it to the soil, do you buy fertilizer? or do you just return that plant to the soil, and it just continues the cycle? You know, so say cannabis or something that's an annual, you know, that you're gonna grow once. Well, you're gonna harvest the fruit, and then you're gonna chop the whole thing back down into the soil right where it stood, and that's gonna feed that next plant that you put in there everything that the last plant uptook. So yeah, it's a good question, and it's also a great principle to keep in natural farming, but definitely not limited to. There are a few things that Master Cho says is like citrus FPJ only on citrus. Don't use citrus FPJ on other plants. But if you make a purslane or a comfrey or a banana FPJ, you can use it on anything, you know, and it'll benefit it. Another one is pineapple. If you make a pineapple FPJ, he said use it on pineapple only. And you know, it has something to do with the acidities and yeah, and stuff like that, and how it would react to other plants. So yeah. Just a little bit more on KNF. We're collecting those leadership microbes from the forest, from the unadulterated apex forest, and we're growing them out and training them to become teachers to our IMO3 pile. Remember we talked about this with Drake, and just showing you more of how to create fertility. But back to garden bed setup. These are just some pictures of habitat. I'll go through those after. Okay, so we're gonna go through here. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So there's 6 basic components to this garden bed. First off, we have our container that we discussed. It could be logs, could be rocks, could be boards, whatever. You got cardboard on the bottom. Now say you're on just for instance, is a grassy lawn in someone's yard, and we wanted to build a bed on top of it. Why do we put the cardboard down first? Anybody know? Right. So that cardboard, as opposed to a weed mat or a plastic, is gonna do the same thing a weed mat or a plastic would do, which is kill that layer of unwanted plants, turn that root mass into now microbial and worm food, and then it deteriorates at the perfect rate to start letting these layers start activating and becoming fungal and bacterial active with microbes. So number one, we got cardboard on the bottom. It snuffs out all our unwanted things that are growing, and it gives us actually, because what is cardboard but just wood pulp? So it's actually a fungal food also, and worms tend to love it. If you have a piece of cardboard on the ground, come back to it 30 days later, peel it up or move it to the side, there'll be worms, things jumping around, all kind of air holes. You'll be amazed. It's crazy. Cardboard's like magical stuff for natural farming. And then, so on the bottom here, we don't want to just throw our soil in there. What we want to do is we want to have some kind of carbon sink or a fungal food network that's going to be digesting a lot of the nutrients that make it to the bottom and making them available to these these taproots down here. So by doing so, what we do is we throw wood chips down here, a little bit of green waste material, some leaves, twigs, logs, and branches. So remember the Hugo Culture? Well, what we're doing is making a mini version of a Hugo Culture in our bed. Because what do we want? We want beds that are living and giving. Not that are filled with dead soil. Not that after round 1, all the grass under here starts sprouting through and you get over it because it's hard and burdensome, and it's nothing that you look forward to because you didn't take the steps to set it up in a way that's living and giving. So dry leaves, wood chips, green leaves, green waste, twigs, logs, and now depending on how deep your bed is how much of this can go in. Okay, number 3, we got our living soil. Now let's talk about components of a living soil real quick. To me, a a potting soil is different than a landscape soil or a native soil, right? So a potting soil. And that's usually what we're going to be using to build a raised bed, is some kind of potting soil we made or we collected from the native area, and we got it prepped to put in here. Basically what's different than just building straight on the ground and building soil right off the ground or in a Hugo type situation. This comes into play, bulk amount of potting soil, right? So basically, like I said, I used to have a soil business, so I studied soil for a long time. And I understand soil, and remember John was here and he was talking about the 4 elements of soil yesterday, or I mean last week. I always say yesterday. Last week. So keep those 4 in mind. He talked about structure, life, organic matter, the spiritual aspect of your soil. And what was the 4th one? There's one more. I don't have it on the top of my head right now. But anyway, I'm going to talk about more practical 1/3 mix. This is a general rule for a potting soil. And what I mean by that is 1/3 compost and or castings. If you're using just straight worm castings, you're not going to use a 1/3. But if you're using castings and compost, you can get it up to 1/3 of your mix. So this is the key element of life right here. Without this, your soil has no life and it's not living soil. Super crucial. 1/3 compost. If you made it in your house, even better. And then we want 1/3 some kind of aggregate, some kind of drainage material, something that'll let air stay in there. So what I want to avoid personally is man-made products. So perlite, could live without perlite. You know, that white stuff that you find in potting soil bags. Why not perlite? Main reason why not perlite, number 1, is man-made. Number 2, it's silica sand puffed in a factory. So they pop it like popcorn, and it makes, basically it's mimicking pumice, which is volcanic rock. It makes it so it's porous and light, and it holds a lot of air, right? So what the difference, though, if you look at this on a microscopic level, basically it's shards of glass. Yes, it cuts your worms, your microbes avoid it. Everything that's natural living in that system avoids it, you know. It's not really conducive to life. It does drain, it does help wick moisture and all that kind of stuff, but it's not key. So what can we use for a drainage rock instead here in Hawaii? Right. And if we're on the mainland, maybe pumice. So that's a way better choice than vermiculite or perlite or any of these man-made products, which are usually byproducts of a different industry anyway. And they're just trying to capitalize on it and sell it back to the ag industry. The go-to for all the waste products of every industry. Just sell it to the ag guys, they'll use it, you know. And then we got 1/3, and this is a little controversial, but I think it's critical to a potting soil. And this is going to be your fluff, your tilth, your loam, you know, your fluffiness, and that usually comes in the form of peat moss. Okay? You can find native peat moss in the forests around the Ohia forest. And if it's part of your yard, you could harvest that humanely. And if it's part of wild, you could harvest that extra humanely and get some native peat moss. You can also feel pretty comfortable, and why I say that, it's very controversial, the peat industry. The number one reason why the peat industry is heavily controversial is that most of our peat used to come from Ireland, Scotland, Ireland regions. And the people of these regions used the peat for their lifestyle. They would use the peat to build homes, to heat their homes, to cook food, all kind of reasons that they used this peat moss, right? And the English were over harvesting it. And so a global propaganda or positive propaganda was put out there to say we need to stop the peat industry. It's ruining the cultures and the people that live in these northern regions where the peat comes from. So number one, that's why peat already has a bad rap before we even get into using peat agriculturally. From the 1800s, it has a bad rap because it used to be harvested from a small place. But now, 99.9% of the peat that's used in agriculture comes from these massive peat bogs in Canada. And these are like far as the eye can see, just peat growing. And when you cut peat, it does grow back. And it's just moss, basically, but it's thick. I mean, this moss is, super thick. And basically, if you get a bale, that 3.5 cubic foot bales, they're usually just cut right out of the earth and then bagged. Not even sterilized or anything. But if you get the one that's in a smaller bag than the bulk bags, they're usually sterilized. So when buying peat from the store, you want the bulk compressed bags because they're usually raw and not sterilized. So they'll still have some kind of microbial life in there and some kind of like vibration that's going to put you in the right direction. Do you guys know the big industry replacement for this one?
Sawdust?
You could use some sawdust, yeah, but that's going to be more of a carbon. That would be more, cocoa core. Cocoa core is the one that came in, and so when you hear a lot of propaganda against peat, it's from the cocoa core industry. But I'll give you a little backstory on cocoa core. Cocoa core was introduced first to the United States ag industry in the 70s. And why cocoa core is widely available was basically from the coconut industry in Indonesia, in Southeast Asia, where we get all our coconut waters from today and all our coconut products and oils that are huge now, just in the last, 10 years? Right? So in the 70s, they tried to sell the farmers the cocoa peat, or the cocoa core, and yeah, bring it on. And they tried it. Well, it ended up bringing this certain bacteria with it. And it was like a yellowing of the plants. I forget the exact name of the bacteria. But farmers started saying, no, we don't want the coconut stuff no more. It harbors certain life that we don't want on our farm. So that faded out forever. But then the resurgence of the coconut drink industry, we also saw a resurgence of the cocoa core industry and cannabis in particular. And now it's like a toted, cocoa core, it's one of the best things ever. When really it's a byproduct of another industry. They're just trying to sell farmers once again. So we're gonna avoid the cocoa core from what I understand and what I was taught by my soil teachers, is to avoid the cocoa core. Now a little bit of cocoa core instead of peat, is it gonna hurt your 1/3 mix? No, you'll be fine. It still works. It does the job the peat does. It might invite a different set of microbes.
How about coconut mulch?
Great, good stuff. Yeah. And so just keep in mind, I'm not bad mouthing coconut. I'm bad mouthing the industry. And the process, and then the set of microbes that process and that company and that industry attracts to those baled up sold products. Getting coconut from our land, from shredding it in a chipper, waiting for it to decompose till we can just use it as is a great tool, and it has that airy, spongy quality to it, and is a really good mulch. And that would be different than adding it as 1/3 to your. If you could somehow get it chopped up to add as a peat moss, that would be cool too. But anyway, 1/3 mix, you guys got that? Okay, so there's a few other components that makes this a living soil. This would be your base, right? The other components are, you guys good here? I can erase this. There's a few other components that I like to bring into the picture. And number one is biochar. And the biochar is carbonized wood. So it's wood burnt at a very low temperature to where it just burns out all the organic matter, and all you're left with is the carbon shell. So it's pretty much 100% carbon. And what that does is it's just like the cinders and whatnot. It passes water through, and it houses microbes as well. So what Master Cho calls biochar is microbe apartments, or microbial housing, you know. So that's like where they all can like live and reproduce and eat and stuff, you know. So biochar is a good component, and you can have it, you know, 5 to 10, even up to 10% in your soil. The worm castings we talked about. Ideally, you use compost and then use worm castings as a supplement. And the worm castings can be up to 20%. Up to 20%. So this one you want at about 5% of your total mix. Worm castings you could have up to 20%. And then the third one, or actually I'm going to do 4 altogether, is the calcium carbonate. Older soils tend to have plenty of calcium in them. Younger soils tend not to. So this is just crushed coral that we could get from either the beach, or BEI Hawaii sells the dredged from Kauai Harbor. They'll dredge out the bottom, so the sand and the silt and the crustacean bodies and the shell bodies and the crushed up coral bodies. They actually bring it up onto a conveyor belt, and they rinse it with clean water, and then they dry it and bag it. So you can get like a really easily applied agricultural calcium carbonate straight from the island, which is cool. Not everyone has access to that kind of material.
That's in Kauai High.
It's in Kauai High, but BEI Hawaii sells a $5 bag for like a 20-pound bag, and it's also at Farm and Garden sometimes.
Yeah.
The last component here that I wanted to touch on is rock dust. And if you study Rudolf Steiner, he talks about mother rock. So Rudolf Steiner refers to basalt rock as mother rock, that it's the parent material of the planet. And he says inside the mother rock are elemental potentials and paramagnetic potentials, electromagnetic potentials. If it's micronized, microbes can eat the rock dust and poop it out as minerals to be absorbed by the plant. Rock dust is key, and what's cool is we live on mother rock.
Salt.
Our whole island is basalt.
Yep.
We live on a basalt island, and we can get rock dust almost micronized. You can get the micronized out of it if you wash it from West Hawaii concrete, because they mash it up to make their concrete. So you can ask them for their mortar mix or just their crushed basalt rock, and you could get the fines out of it yourself, or just use it as is into your. So yeah, that's like a dank potting soil right there.
What are the percentages on the third and fourth one? You just
This is just at like 2% at the max, and this could be, you know, up to 5 to 10, even 10%, but 5%.
Calcium.
The mother rock, the calcium, you could just have like 2%, you know, added into your total mix. Any questions on the living soil?
Soil from your.
So-
years? I'm kind of confused.
No, you're.
I understand that part, but how do you? What do you use for like the base?
Okay, so great question, and I'll answer it directly. Do I have that recipe? No. So if going back to that 1/3 blend, he's asking, where do I get this material for a 1/3 blend if you're telling me to get it all from my yard? Well, in that case, you're not, because you're going to need a bulk amount of it, right? So you could, here's a few options. You could get the county green waste delivered to your farm in bulk, let it break down for about 6 months to a year. Now you got your 1/3 of your compost, right?
What's like the faster way?
Okay, I'm gonna get to that too. I'll get to the immediate way also, you know? So, or like I had that tractor you saw in that one picture, and I would get huge windrows of the county green waste, and then I'd come through with that tractor and I'd turn it every 2 weeks. And that steam would come out, and I would just make sure, and I was speeding up that process. So I was getting in about 3 months, it was ready for my 1/3 compost.
You could spray your IMOT on it.
You could spray FAA or IMOT and speed it up even faster. Remember Drake called this fuel? So it's like you throw some fire on that compost, you know, and let it just go faster, you know? Yeah, so that's the vibes. So that's how you could speed it up if you wanted to do it on your property. But here's what I would do and what I did do. There's a brethren named Dino, and he owns a company called Organic Matters Hawaii, okay? And you can tell him that I sent you. And you see all this stuff, besides these castings, he puts it in there. Because we've talked a lot over the years, you know? And now he's finally got something that I could send students to confidently. And what he does is he composts the county green waste properly with a giant tractor and sprinklers. He adds EM1 to it as it breaks down. He adds calcium carbonate to it as it breaks down. Once it's broken down, he takes that and he adds biochar and he adds rock dust to it. So now he's got that compost with all the good, and he screens it too. Yeah, so it's screened. And then he'll take that and he'll blend it. So he's not giving you the dankest, but he's giving you the foundation for you to make the dankest. Okay? So you go to his place and you buy his landscape potting soil. It's not really potting soil. He thinks it might be, but it's not. It's not potting soil. If you stuck that stuff in a pot, I guarantee your plant will die.
Right.
I can pretty much guarantee it. Even though he'll be like, yeah, stick it in a pot and grow some more, you know. But so you take his stuff, Organic Matters Hawaii, and you could tell him that Logan sent you. Yeah, and he sells it by the yard.
How much do you to have if I'm just like putting it on top of a lawn?
Right. I'll show you some pictures here in a second. We can explain it. Organic Matters Hawaii. And buy his landscape potting soil mix. Take it home and add equal parts peat moss. That's the key. If you don't do that, then you're going to get the dead plant. If you do that, you're going to get a thriving plant.
You know what need cinders too, or no?
No, because he already has. So what he is that compost that I just explained, Hawaiian cinders and Hawaiian cinder fines.
Oh, okay.
So that's what his mix is. He also has one, instead of the fines, he'll add Hamakua topsoil, which I don't know how valuable that stuff is. From the sugarcane industry, so it's just all piled up on different parts of people's wash downs, you know, so they'll sell it to guys like this that, you know, because there's just a big berm and yard or farm or something. So you're going to take that home and you're going to mix it 1/3 to 1/2 peat moss. And if you don't have direct access to a big bag of peat moss, just buy the Pro Mix. Even though it has the perlite in it, you're still off to a good race. You know, you're on the right foundation. The no perlite is that much better though.
But you could build off the Pro Mix.
Yeah, you can, and especially if you're using it
Like at the base or
for potting and not in like
or
a
bags.
bags, right. But if you want that living bed that's gonna keep living and giving, I suggest not having the perlite in it. Yeah, so like after this is going for a while, naturally worms are gonna crawl through here and just start living in here, and they're gonna come to the surface, and we'll get back to this. Now, do we all understand living soil?
Yeah.
And where to get it from on the island?
Yeah.
And how to treat it right? And then you can add your own castings to it. Remember what the worm castings you're gonna have on your farm pretty soon? Whoever those guys were? You're gonna be adding your own castings to that and your own inoculants. You'll have your own IMO4 to now inoculate it with, and and pretty soon you're gonna have soil that looks like that and is giving you fungal life. So that's a cannabis tree right there. That's some kind of cover crop char, something that sprouted up, and this is my mulch on top of my living soil, and you just see here that God made some art. And then you can see here, if you could understand what this is, there's a Hugo mound type thing right here. Kind of stops right here and it goes over to the end of the picture. These are all cover crops under here that I could now chop back any day now. I could chop those back and feed them into the soil. This is the plant that I'm choosing to cultivate, which is a cannabis plant growing out. The stem is right down here where it meets the soil, and that's the top of it. So this is a Hugo style mound made in this same way, but I made a mound like that. So I didn't have a container for it. Actually on the sides are banana logs and regular logs. You can see a log there. And that's the same tent, or a greenhouse. This is a different greenhouse. You see the edge of the greenhouse here, my Hugo bed here. It mounds inward like that. These are cannabis plants. This is comfrey. This is lemongrass. Anytime I need to mulch that, I just chop these things and mulch it. So the mulch is 6 inches away from where it needs to go. Is that making sense now to you, Justin?
Yeah.
And you could see how you could implement something like that, but then just make it into a big mound and have it go the length of your greenhouse, you know? And then you just treat that mound like this, the living soil. And then getting back to finishing this, now that you've seen some examples, we got our cover crop seed that we threw down on top of our soil. We scattered a little bit of IMO4 or worm castings to inoculate that top. And then we lightly mulched it in to protect those microbes and to keep weed seeds out. Just first it's going to be light over the cover crop, and then you're going to see it sprout through. Once it gets big enough, we're going to chop and drop heavy mulch for the next layer. And then if it's a cannabis situation, that's going to be your last time you mulch. You're going to harvest, and then it'll hopefully be broken down well enough to start this process over again, exactly all over again, just like that same way. Cover crop seed, scatter IMO, worm castings or compost, lightly mulch. And you do it over and over and over again. And that's what keeps your soil alive, and it keeps it being fed.
How much time would you need after you did all of that again?
Ideally you're gonna give it like a month, you know, and keeping it moist the whole time too. You're gonna keep it watered like plants are in there, and you're gonna, because if you don't, nothing's gonna do anything. It'll just start stagnating. So the moisture is gonna keep it all breaking down and juicing and staying alive, and and those microbes in there, and they're still going to work like there's a plant in there and keep doing all this stuff, you know. Worms are going to come to the surface, and so that's your aeration. You got microbes and worms tilling and exchanging air and all that kind of stuff, you know. So really critical. So that's the garden bed setup for living and giving beds, and that's what we're going to do today. We're going to do this exact thing. So not only did you see it and hear about it, you're going to see it in real time out here. I just wanted to show you too, like imagine this is just a 100 or 200 gallon smart pot. You're going to do the same thing. You're going to layer the bottom the same way, and you're going to treat the top the same way. These are some just sitting in my yard. You see, these are smart pots.
And they're living.
Those are living beds. Yeah.
You can keep them living.
I can just keep them living now. I don't gotta, after I harvest all this, I don't gotta empty it and put new. No, I'm just gonna treat it like this, and I'm gonna keep on going. And like here, you know, this would easily feed a family of 4, and if you had it on rotation, you'd be good all year round with these vegetables anyway. And add the taro, add the cassava, add some pigeon pea. You know, you got all your carbohydrates, all your grains, everything's taken care of. And we're going to get into that too here in a second.
Are these separated because they're just different plants and you don't want them?
Yeah, so this is just to show you guys like another alternative to the everything else we've talked about. Yeah, just a little raised bed, easy. Stick it right on your lawn. You're growing food today, you know. You got that potting soil delivered. You mixed it with your peat moss. You got your wood chips on the bottom, like bam, bam, bam. You're growing food today, you know. And a lot of people, for some reason in the modern era, love a container garden. It's like it makes more sense to them than the garden on the ground.
And what's your view?
Whatever it takes for you to grow food, you should do it. That's my view. So if you feel more comfortable setting up one of these and not worrying about weeds growing in and all that, just do it, you know. And that's what, when I set these up, I was like, man, like I just want my son to be able to walk out here and just be able to do these vibes and not, Dad, this and that, you know. You know, you just walk right up to it. It's easy, it's clean, it's simple, you know. So that was the motivation behind those beds.
And how much would it cost to order this organic stuff and just to do one of those pots?
So I mean, what's cool about the Organic Matters Hawaii is for 60 to 80 bucks a yard.
Yeah.
A yard.
Yeah. So
Bro, that's like 400 bucks if you were to buy potting soil a yard.
So how many of those do you get per yard?
I mean, 1 yard is gonna fill up like, I mean, I could do the math, but if you had a 100-gallon part, yeah, something like that. I think there's forget how many square footage is per yard of soil. It was like, I used to know all that math, but not at the moment. And then this could also, you know, it could only be that much soil if you were doing like quicker rotations and wanting to add more organic matter between rounds and stuff. You could start low, you know. Like when I harvested this bag of bok choy, where was it? This bag used to be cilantro before the bok choy went in it, and the cilantro roots are only like that far in there.
Right.
You know what I mean? It's like they don't really need much.
Cover crop.
Yeah, exactly. right.
Is it good to have like a bunch of different cover crops, like a bunch of varieties?
Mm-hmm. Yep. Actually, I was gonna get into cover crops a little bit. Good question. We'll talk about that right now. So cover crops are crucial, especially for natural farming. Master Cho recommends them in his soil foundation recipe, and also Masanobu Fukuoka swears by them for mimicking nature. Because soil is never barren in nature. That's like a #1 rule of soil, like it's never not covered in nature. If you see soil out in nature, like in a natural setting, not covered, it's most likely heavily rounded up, sprayed. And that's how it maintains that not being covered nature, because it's not natural like that. So cover crop. Cover crop. Multiple reasons. One reason I already told you was it maintains moisture. Number 2, it feeds the soil. Number 3, it brings in, through its rhizosphere and exudates, different sets of microbiology, therefore diversifying your microbiology. So cover crops are they're calling in all kinds of different life than just your cannabis plant or just your, I don't know why that's the only example I have today, but your crop of choice. Cover crop seed also nitrogen fixing. A lot of cover crops are nitrogen fixers, so we reach for things like clover, legumes, cowpea, chickpea, flax. These are all nitrogen fixers. So they actually, what that means is they actually take atmospheric nitrogen, suck it out of the air, bring it into the plant structure, bring it down to the roots, and pop it out into the soil. So, I mean, just like imagining that in my head is like that means that thing has like so much potential and powers. Like it just sucks nitrogen and puts it in the soil, and then our other plant of choice can tap into that. It's like magical brilliance, you know what I mean? It's amazing. Cover crops, nitrogen fixers. What other reasons for cover crops? They can turn into pollinators once they start blooming and attract predator bugs. They're going to create habitat under your tree of choice, so it's like Master Cho breaks it down like this. He's like shows the say there's a MacNut tree, and then you got all kind of cover crop out in the field around here. This might not be the best example, but you'll get what I'm trying to say. Is that the bugs that might want to damage your crops, well, they have habitat here.
Right.
So they're all good already. They got food. They're happier because they would rather be in this situation than attacking your plant. So you're creating habitat, and not only that, one of these guys that might be detrimental to your plant of choice has a predator that's in the system now. So it's not going to have a chance to weaken your crop. Will it be eliminated completely? Probably not. But will it be held to where the pest pressure is so low it doesn't matter it's in your system? Probably. Yeah. You got to keep those cycles of life going, and in a monocrop or in a modern ag system of that one crop, no cover, no habitat, all you're getting is pest pressure because there's nothing in nature to balance it. So you go, oh, I have a powdery mildew outbreak. Oh, I better spray it. Oh, we have these thrips. I better spray it. Oh, there's mites. I better spray it. Where all those problems have a predator or a balancing agent in nature if you just gave that right habitat for those to also survive. Good question about cover crop. Some carrots in that bag. What else we got? Just some kale. Just showing like greens are like protein, you know, lots of protein. If you're not eating meat, greens are a great protein builder. Collard greens. And then I just wanted to show you this. It's not looking too clean, but this one is like it's countertop height. So it's at 36 inches. And then it's just raised off the ground, and I got the bottom filled with rocks. And then after the rocks, I started this because the rocks just brought it up a bit, you know? So I didn't have to put so much soil in there. But anyway, that's like another option, like maybe some, you know, you got a wife or something that would love to have it where she doesn't have to bend down to do her thing, and you got it all right up here, you know? Okay. Any questions on the garden setup? Garden bed setup? Okay, so we're gonna do this last section on crop selection, and then we could decide as a class if we want to eat and then work, or go work and then eat, or what. But I was gonna call up my brethren. You gonna break this down for these guys? You wanna break it down for these guys?
Sure.
So Ola Reed is my good friend here.
Thanks, brother. Hey, aloha.
And I wanted to introduce Ola because he's going to share with us a Hawaiian legend about taro.
Okay.
So taro, man, taro to me is super special, and it was very special to the original people of this land. And Ola, as a representative of those people, is going to break down to you what this picture here symbolizes on the slide. And just remember, this was, you can stand here, this was our older brother, and he's going to break down the story. Go for it, Ola.
All right, aloha everybody. Does anybody know Haloa or where Haloa is? Nobody? All right, so basically to talk about kalo or to talk about taro is to kind of go back to the beginning, right? The source. We call it kumulipo. It's actually within our heritage, the kumulipo. It's the creation chant. And the kumulipo goes back to Papa Hanamoku, which is Mother Earth, and Wakea, which is Sky Father, and the creation of things. And when these two deities got together, they created the islands, Hanau, Hawaii, and Hanau, Maui. That's basically the birth of Hawaii and Maui. And between this, Wakea actually found another woman, Ho'ohoku Kalani, and her name actually translates to the stars of the heavens. And basically they had a kid, a child, and within the story of the kumulipo is they actually birthed Molokai, Lanai, and then Wakea actually, or Papa Hanamoku, she got jealous of their union, which was Wakea and Ho'ohoku Kalani, and they decided to actually have the rest of the islands, which was Oahu, Kauai, Niihau, Kaho'olawe. And because Hawaiians have big families, Wakea actually went back to Ho'ohoku Kalani and actually had another child, and this was Haloa Nakalau Kapalili, and that was his full name. And Haloa was actually born Alu Alu, or still. He was actually, Alu Alu means loose in Hawaiian, and he was actually born a stillborn. And Ho'ohoku Kalani was actually very, very grieved. She was actually crying in distress, and she actually buried this child into the earth, the Aina, and through her grieving and her praying and her chanting and stuff like that, a plant was actually born. And through her observation of this plant, it grew up tall, and the leaves actually quivered. And this is actually how Haloa Nakalau Kapalili actually got his name, because Haloa of the quivering leaf is actually the full name. And when you actually look at kalo and taro, when it actually is blown, that's what the leaves do. It quivers in the wind, right? The lao, the leaf. So when this happened, this is how they got their Haloa's name, full name, was the bigger brother, our bigger brother. And Wakea and Ho'ohoku Kalani actually had another kid, which turned into be the first Kanaka, Haloa, which is actually us, man, right? So when we look to kalo or taro, basically when we eat it, when we're around it, it's our link back to the Aina. It's our direct link back to the Aina. And you can see it too, because during the lifespan of kalo, it'll actually, when you plant it as a huli, it'll actually grow big and tall like a teenager. And then as it starts to mature, it starts to actually, the leaves start to actually kind of shrink. And then you can actually see all the keiki or the oha popping up around it. And depending on the variety of kalo, it's actually anywhere from 4 to 10 keikis, depending on the variety.
About 9 months for that first corm too, right?
Yeah, for sure, you know. And about that area, 9 months is the perfect time to harvest, because then you don't want to get the rotting into the corm, right? So that's probably the best maturity time. But going back to the link of us and Haloa, we are all Haloa, you know, Kanaka, man, and the kalo is actually a very link back to the Aina, because we take care of it. It takes care of us, and that's how oha, keiki, ohana, that's where it comes into play as well. And this is, you know, a perfect example of kalo.
Thank you for telling us that story. That's a killer way of explaining it too.
Yeah,
I
yeah,
always knew that it came from a person.
yeah, for sure.
That's awesome.
I actually learned this from Lanakila Manguel, and he's actually running for OHA, and he's like, I mean, like us, you know what I mean? He's into it. He does all the work before he actually, you know, helps out the people and stuff like that. So there's another guy to follow if you guys are, you know, want to get pushed into the right direction. And yeah, you know, you can basically, it's, you know, it's the king of all plants, you know.
Thank you so much, Ola.
Yeah, no problem.
Round of applause for Ola. That was perfect, brethren. I'm glad that you broke that down. And I know he could do it much, much better than I could, and pay some reverence to the plant. Our older brother, bro, like, I mean, come on, man, it makes me want to cry almost, like, you know, it's like we're like our brother's keeper, you know, like, you know, God provided these things for us to sustain ourselves. It's pretty like a heavy situation, you know, that we need to pay attention to, and we need to listen to our elders and listen to our brothers, you know. And this plant right here could be the key for us here in Hawaii, and it was already the key for the indigenous from this land. So like I said, we need look no further than just about 100 years ago. That's all it was just like around the corner, like people were living real, you know, outside of the system of unhealthiness and mind control and manipulation. Imagine what your thoughts in your day would be like if you weren't involved in a system that we live in now, and you're involved more in like that ahupua'a lifestyle, or you understood these chants and these stories, and the food you ate wasn't just a piece of calorie, you know. It was actually your elders and your brothers and that you were partaking in, you know. So this is deep, and I really wanted brethren to drive that home, and I think he did a good job. So give thanks. Kalo, number 1. Okay, so when we're choosing crops, again, I'm just going to go through a few of these. Sweet potatoes, cassava, pumpkin, ulu, coconut, macnut. Very little effort goes into growing these crops. Fruit trees that grow well, like citrus, starfruit, papaya, pineapples. Very little effort goes into growing these crops. Mulberries, pigeon peas, perennial spinaches, greens. I can't emphasize greens enough. If there's one European vegetable that grows great in Hawaii, is greens. We could grow it at any climate, from the ocean to the 2,000 feet. You're growing greens, and they're very easy to grow. That's a wonderful crop. They give you so much nutrition. It's a great crop to grow in any kind of greens. Yeah, collard greens, kale, chard, Swiss chard, lettuce. Amaranth, lettuce. Lettuce would be more here in this category, I feel, like my quick growing, like my cilantros and my lettuces, which I'm just going to turn over fast, you know. I'm gonna harvest it before it even needs sprayed with anything. I'm gonna harvest it before bugs even know it's there, you know. And usually you only see the bugs come around when something starts getting a little older, and there's a few of those leaves that are now susceptible. If we go back to what John Balloon was saying the other day about the children grazing on their own compared to the structured food given, and the children that were grazing were healthier because they're using their instincts that are taken away from us by eating the excitotoxins, the dyed foods, and the packaged products, because we've lost the ability to use our eyeballs to see what's ripe, what's good, and what minerals we need. That would be using our instincts to then go graze on those foods. So, you know, my point being that the insects work the same way. The insects are going off vibration, color. So when they see something yellowing, see something old or damaged, that's where they're coming. They're coming for that, you know. All right, so that's crop selection. And just a few last things to consider, and we'll wrap this up. Do I have anything else here? Yeah, just some more kalo patch. I thought that was pretty cool. The family around the kalo. Community. Just some more of my food patches we could go through real quick as I talk about this stuff. Things to consider in Hawaii when growing food. Here you can see this fence right here. Super simple temporary fence. You see this corner right here? Free pallets all over the island. You make a corner with the pallets. You connect it with some wood any way that makes sense. I just have a cross beam going here and one on the bottom. That's enough to stabilize that corner post. And now I don't need to build some fancy fence. So when you're going to set up a food forest or a Hugo Culture or something like that, and it's out in the yard and you got pigs, you got to fence it, or else the fertility that you're establishing is going to bring the pigs to dig it all up, because they want the worms, they want the roots. They'll eat honu grass roots. They'll just tear it all up just to eat the roots, you know, because those are the minerals and all that good stuff in there. Again, region, climate, crop choice, we talked all about that. Consider what pests you have in your region, and if it's going to react to your plant, maybe not grow that plant and grow something that the pests won't get. How much rain you get is going to determine what you're going to grow. We discussed all that. Composting and worm bins, we discussed. Food sources, what are you going to feed your crops once you got them all set up, you know, and that's where the K&F comes into play. If you are living in a system or a situation where you want to grow stuff that you are dealing with pests, what's going to be your plan of action? So your IPM is your integrated pest management. And you see that that's like a technical horticulture word, agriculture word. And I just wanted to show you guys this. Weed control, plant what you want so weeds don't grow. I just talked about that. And we'll just go over some of these pictures before we go start the project. So right here you see, like, I fenced this off first. So there's a fence on this whole perimeter. These bananas are on the outside. And then I terraced it. So these are terraces here, 1, 2, 3, 4. And then I put, like you can see here, this bottom corner. So that's this bottom corner over here. It's logs and banana trunks and some palm fronds and stuff. And so I had to bring this corner up because it was the low spot, you know, on this slope. It's sloping down like that. So that brought that up and made me allowed to make that terrace. So I'm just terraforming the earth, you know, and I'm working with everything. We chopped down all these bananas to make all these beds stand up how we wanted them. You know, by the time we were done, there's only a few of these bananas left, but they're all sprouted and back. And this is my cover crop. These aren't weeds. These are all nutritious soil foods. I could also come through here and eat some of the daikon that's growing in there. Oh, back to the cover crop thing. Daikon or anything root vegetables that drill. So if you ever have a hard pan or a clay soil, daikon can literally drill through those like it just like, yeah. So daikon's a good one. But then what these are gonna be eventually are actually dryland taro patches. So you can see I already planted this back row right here, and then I got right there. You can barely tell, but it's a sweet potato. So when this starts to die back, or I chop it back, the sweet potato is gonna start filling in, and then the kalo is gonna start making these big umbrellas that are gonna shade out any weeds, and it'll just be sweet potato and kalo, bananas. I got some pigeon peas on the corners. I got some sugar cane on the edges, and then I could come in here and lemongrass the whole border to keep weeds from encroaching on the sides. So what I'm trying to show you is that you can just make these little fortresses of fertility and food and diversity and feed yourself. Very little effort. We made this in one day. If the fence we did first and then set it all up in one day, but if you worked an 8-hour day with 2 guys, you could have this all done in one day. See a little more diversity here. Got a banana sprouting up and a tea. This is a different patch. That same idea, right? But it's a pineapple patch. And then Just to finish off, like you can kind of see in here, you know, we got some tree spinach. We're just gonna start interplanting. This is all vetiver because it's on the bottom side of the hill. So that's gonna send its tap roots down to hold anything from wanting to fall as it rains. And you can kind of see this is sloping upwards and these are terraces. And we just kind of built up the fronts to make them even with the back and filled them in with cardboard, mulch, and pineapple plants. Cassava, vetiver, lemongrass. Here's a papaya patch. It's just a little kind of like just showing the border and fertility. There's a lot of fertility in here. Very little weeds grow here. We don't have to weed whip or anything just because of this canopy. You got your taro in here, has more canopy and more diversity. And these are going off. Like, there's no way that the people that live on my hill could eat all these fruits. 80% of them fall on the ground.
What elevation is that at?
I'm at about 1900 feet.
Logan, how long does it take for the pineapples to mature?
So a pineapple from a crown will take 2 years. And then what? But once, so
What do you call the babies? What do you call the babies?
slip.
Slip. Okay.
What do you
Is that
call
white
them?
pineapple or?
Yeah, these are all white pineapple. Here, I'll
I call them keikis.
Yeah, keikis.
I've heard people call them like chromes or.
chromes or yeah. So see this pineapple here? Say that guy took 2 years to come in, right? It's one bush, one plant gave me one pineapple. But look, after I harvested, I got 1, 2, 3. There's probably another one back here. 4 babies to transplant. 5 with the crown. One pineapple gave me 5 babies. So I started with 100 pineapples. Well, now I got 500. And I planted those,
Takes a couple years.
and now I got 1,000.
Just like
Or wait, no, 500 times 5. Right,
2,500.
right.
Yeah.
So you see it just like taro.
Yeah,
Right,
just like taro.
same thing. So just one of these taro plants, your generations are good now. You know what I mean? It might take you a couple of years to get it to feeding your ohana, but your generations are good from one start. From one start.
So, is it different between the crown and the keikis? Because I've heard the keikis are already mature, like the plant.
Yeah, so depending on when you get to the keiki,
Yeah.
those babies, the slips,
Yeah.
they could fruit the next year, depending on when you actually took them off the plant and planted them. But if you plant them really small and fresh just that same year, it's going to take 2 years too.
So when would you take them?
Yeah, you take them when you harvest the pineapple, and then you go plant them. But sometimes you won't get to all those, and you'll come to them a year later, and they're still in the field, and then you break them off and plant them, and they're gonna, fruit that next season. So yeah, just more diversity on the other side of that patch. That pig fence again. Oh, and then you just want materials. You want a successful farm has materials on it. So I had recently had some ohias that were pretty hazardous, so I had a tree trimmer come up and took down some dead ohias and chipped them up for me. And then a guy wanted the wood, so he milled them. And so now I got loads of sawdust and ohia wood chips from my forest on my land ready to be implemented. And without those chips, these is all chips in between my pathways. There's not going to be any weeds in there for months, if not like a year, So just from cardboarding and chipping and mulching, I'm holding back all those weeds and all the labor that goes into maintaining those. Yeah, so just have those things available. If you could have, a load of county green waste dropped off in your farm, 20-yard load, you're set for the year. Now you got that to deal with as it breaks down, it turns into soil. You got top dress material,
Do they charge for that, or they're?
The county green waste is free if you have a truck to go get it. But yeah, you could pay the $300 delivery fee and you got 20 yards in your yard, Just all depending on where you're at, you know.
So you can just get a truck from Home Depot and fill it up and.
Yeah, you could do that too. We're gonna do this today. This is the tree. If you look outside, this is that area we're gonna work on that's now transformed. I just wanted to show you what we did. First, we tore out all these ferns. And then we started laying cardboard on that back strip. That's Angelo helping me out. There's a bunch of, that's just the biomass from the ferns right there piled up on that tree. There's a bunch of rocks we got rid of. And now it's kind of looking more like this, how you see it today. And these are just simple, real simple beds just screwed together of some mohia planks. And we can go out there and look at them. There's that old green bed in the back. And this one would layer with rocks before I started my soil to make it not so deep. And yeah, that's what it looks like right now. So we're gonna get started on that. It's actually already 12:15, so what, lunch break and then do that work, you guys think?
Yes, sir.
Okay. All right, the lecture was a little longer than I thought, but I hope you guys gained some good stuff from it. And any last minute questions? Okay, we're gonna do a lunch break and then we're gonna get together right out here. Remember that thing that we were showing on the board? So that's what these are out here now. And we're gonna go ahead and, I don't know if we have enough material here to do all this, so we're gonna start with these two and kind of work our way that way. And I'll instruct you guys as we go. And anybody feeling like getting hands-on, getting dirty, we can go ahead and do that. And it'll be fun with all of us here. It'll be super easy and breezy. So our approach is that we went over already is that we cardboarded the bottom after we removed all the biomass and the root knots of weeds that were underneath there. And that's all back here now, composting and out of the way. And we laid down our cardboard and we set up our beds on top of our cardboard. So from here, there's many things you could do. You could inoculate the cardboard if you wanted to with an IMO4T, EM1, various things you could inoculate. You could put fish amino acid down ahead of time, and that just giving that boost of life. But there's no really reason to do that besides if you were just trying to get super technical and really cool and stuff. So what we're gonna do first is go to our first layer, which is our wood chips. And what we'll do is Gunner, if I can get you to pull these plants out of here, out of that bed, and just stick them on the side over here for now. And then first thing we're gonna do is there's wood chips right here in these 3 buckets. And we're gonna go with about 1 inch of wood chips on the bottom. And so as soon as he's got that clear, we got buckets here and some shovels. And you can just use your hands, use the shovels, and whoever feels like moving some wood chips in there, we can start doing that now. What I'm also gonna do is come with some of these dead leaves over here, and we're going to put a little bit of dead leaves in there. And at the same time, what we can do at this point is make a nice level surface on the bottom, so we got the same depth of soil throughout the bed. All right, got some good wood chips in there. Now let's do some of these leaves and a little bit of twigs. You want to start chopping? Could like chop that, start chopping that down. Squirt, maybe come over here in the grass side, Elijah. So I'm just gonna saw some of these and start laying some of these in there. This is just like a nice green wood. That Elijah's getting some prepped over there too. I'll just kind of lay some of those in there.
Should we do this other bed?
You want some of this?
And then we can start this one right here too. And I was just gonna see how much wood chips we got. Looks like we got plenty wood chips, so we could go to that third bed as well. We'll leave this one. I'm gonna do that one a different day. Have a different.
Put rock in there.
Yeah. No, let's not.
That's actually what we're gonna be growing.
Yeah.
My bad, moving them over here. My bad, some more here, some more. You might want to put that back over there. So that's what we're gonna be growing.
Okay, that's all good. It's enough green.
Roger.
Yeah, shit. Rip this up.
What's the ratio on the green? It's like
We just need a little bit. I mean, if you're making a compost pile, it's 50-50, but in this situation, like I don't really even need much of this at all. Yeah, exactly.
nice. Yep.
So since these beds are pretty shallow, like we don't really need too much material. The wood chips are pretty much enough, but we'll just give it some more. I'm actually not going to use these green. Okay. So that's looking good for over here. Now we can come with soil into this bed. The soil are these ones, yeah. So you can use buckets. Yeah, the one on the end and these three. That's more wood chips there. Beautiful, and you can like tuck some of the wood, those little branches like in the edges and stuff, you know. And those will be all little fungal homes, you know, for like fungal dominance to start taking over. So you can get them all kind of tucked in the rock, and you can just go ahead and dump that whole thing on there. Oh, wait, my bad, bro. This isn't soil, I'm sorry. This is mulch. This is mulch, I'm sorry. It's all good though. Wrong information. That's pretty much soil right there though. It's all good. Yeah, it's good.
Which one's the soil?
So those two big ones are right there for sure, and the one on the end. That's wood chips in there. So yeah, if we get a little chain going with the buckets, it goes pretty quick, you know. And that's our already pre-mixed real deal potting soil, so should be set with that. You can kind of tuck those leaves around the edges and kind of just fill in the little holes and gaps and stuff.
Is that one already good?
No, we want more. We want to get a lot in here. That's probably what we'll be short on is soil actually, altogether. Yeah, we'll just keep soil coming into these until you guys can lift that and maybe drag it over. Woo! What's the saying? Many hands something? There you go. This is my style. Yeah, it is. Nice, you chop that up. Oh, you know what you can do is you chop this down right there. Yeah.
Yeah, I think
Yep, that one.
This one.
Okay, watch that cord right there. Step over it. Got it?
It's even better than putting the plants in the ground. I like
Right,
it in the dirt.
me too. So yeah, we're pretty much gonna try to get these filled.
This one, you think?
I mean, the more the merrier really on the soils. You can't really go wrong. That one's got enough in it for sure. And the leaves, make sure we kind of tuck the leaves under the edges.
Going in for this one. Yep.
This is my side.
Beautiful. So let's just smooth that out and kind of get it even. If there's any excess of soil, throw it in this bed.
This is your favorite part. Give me your shot.
This is awesome, bro. Insta farm.
What are we planting?
Well, that's the funny part is I have barely any starts, but I'm just showing you guys how to, we'll plant up one of them though with all these. And I was just kind of showing you guys the technique, and with the rest of them I'll show you, if you have a little more time on your hands, what the ideal situation is to plant cover crop first anyway.
Right.
So, yeah.
Which I really need a good list of to kind of figure out what
Nice.
I eat. That one's full, yeah?
That one's nice and full.
Big load.
Hopefully we got enough soil. Beautiful. Nice. All right, so Carl, you want to hand me that bucket, the Ace Hardware bucket?
I'm gonna be honest here, that keeps getting outfitting in the car.
And then, yep, exactly. And then if you want to grab underneath that table where the teas are in there, there's a couple bags of cover crop seed in that basket. All right, so this is a good bed that we'll use as an example for the teaching right here. We got it nice and even. Everything's looking good. We got our layers going. And now I want to inoculate this bad boy with some more life. We already got the really dank living soil, but we're going to give it a nice soil foundation. Master Cho has a soil foundation technique that at this point we would apply IMO4, which is basically your super compost made with your pinnacle microbes. But another way to do something similar is to use worm castings. And I have what I would call like unfiltered worm castings here. It's a lot of compost in these still, and it's a lot of uneaten food source that they were working on, but there also is a lot of worm cocoons, baby worms, and all kind of good castings in here as well. So today we're going to use this as an inoculant, and in IMO4 you'd treat it the same, and basically we're not even making a layer really. We're just, the castings you could use way more, like the avocado peels, some rocks, and like this rock is straight out of the IMO bin, and the worm casting bin. And what you can see is a bunch of fungal growth on the rock. That's what those white microbes are. And those are actually mineralizing, solubilizing the minerals on the rock surface to make them retrievable for the microbes and then the plants, and you know. So it's just showing you how fungal dominant this worm bin is.
Why is it called castings?
I guess it's just a nice way to say poop or manure, and maybe just the biology of it and how it is, like, you know, where a lot of animals' waste product might be filled with things that aren't so desirable, you know, so it's like looked at more as something dirty, where the casting might give it more of a word sound or a definition, because they are sterile pretty much, you know. They're not necessarily sterile from microbes, but positively covered in good microbes. They're like you know, there's nothing pathogenic about them, you know.
As long as we're talking about this, maybe this is not the time, but human castings.
Yeah, so if you read that book in there, it's called Jadam, and that's Master Cho's son. He wrote a book in there, and he says that the average household of 4 flushes down the toilet the equivalent in fertilizer of $600 of chemical fertilizers per day. From the urea in your pee to the nutrients in your feces. And the only thing is like there's also a recipe in there how to ferment them, to make them broken down and bioavailable and properly microbial balanced to apply to a farm in a non-pathogenic way.
You know, we're thinking the whole system. The only thing we all contribute equally is
Well, and that
our castings, right?
right, and well, that goes back to what we taught last week, right? That what you're going to eat is going to determine the cleanliness of that waste, right?
Yeah, exactly.
So if you're eating
Plant-based.
right, if you're eating plant-based, whole food, high grade, like a worm, then that casting is pretty much, and your gut's covered with positive microflora, and your colon's covered with positive microflora. That thing's only going to be positive for the whole system.
So are there plants that really actually need human casting?
I mean, you could start theorizing, you know, where we lost touch with nature, where our spot is in the web of life and in the soil food web, and why our waste systems are only poisonous and not beneficial. And those are the questions that you should be asking, and that should arise when you learn this kind of stuff, you know. So good on you, Merlin. So we got inoculated here, nice covering. The next up would be my cover crop seed. And so here, there's all kind of different cover crops you can get, and we went over a few in there. And this one right here in particular is from Johnny Seeds, which is a really trusted seed bank. And this one is a certified organic spring green manure mix. So they're saying it's going to make green manure for me. And what it is field peas, oats, hairy vetch, and then there's a little bit of other crop. Other crop, like one, like they can't determine, you know, that snuck its way into the field, you know.
Did you buy that at Farm and Garden?
No, so this I just order from Johnny's Direct, or you could order online on Amazon or something. There's another really good one it's called the Organic Garden Blend on Amazon, and it has daikon in it. And that one I like because it creates a lot of biomass. But this one's gonna do the same. They sell a spring green blend and a fall green blend. And depending on the type of seeds that are in there, plant seeds, it's gonna do different mycorrhizal, different microorganisms are going to be attracted to the roots of those plants due to the exudates and the processes of the different plants. So in the fall on the mainland you want different ones than the spring. But here in Hawaii, a good spring blend, we're good to go, you know. So I'm going to do a squirt.
Is this an edible also? So this is in addition to your planting, or is this something?
So this is something we leave alone, and it's mainly just to feed the soil and work with that living system. Because remember, we want our soil to stay alive, so we got to get it covered. And we also, those other benefits of cover crop we talked about, from the nitrogen fixing to the protection from weeds. So if we plant seeds that we want and are actually beneficial to the soil, it'll block out any kind of weed or noxious seed that we don't want in our soil, and that might be a nuisance, you know. Interesting, there's no clover in here. I would think that there would be clover, some clover. You could start throwing some over there too. I would think there would be some clover in here. Usually there's clover. I might actually come back through and throw some clover just because I love it so much. So yeah, there's that. And then I am going to throw a few of these as a cover crop too. I always like throwing something edible in there. This is some cilantro seed. So it'll come up amongst all these other plants, and you can harvest and eat those as they come up and just pull them up by the root. And instead of the seed's not super cheap, but it's not really expensive either. And you can use something like cilantro as a cover crop too, and just eat it and graze it as it grows. Also, greens work great as cover crop, collard greens, and you can just graze them as they grow. You don't have to really chop them all down at once. And if you guys want to, we got enough soil in that bed over there?
Probably not. Is there more soil over there?
No, I'll just come back and we'll finish that one another day. We'll stay right here.
You didn't inoculate that.
Okay, cool. You could do that too. All right, so you're starting to see the process here. If birds are an issue, you're gonna want to cover it, and you could almost have done the inoculation separately, but you kind of just want to cover this, or even bring in one more layer of soil at the end, and get one more layer of soil on there just to kind of shelter it from the birds. They'll still sniff it out and maybe eat some of them, but like if you don't cover it and there's birds around, they could eat like 80% of your seeds, you know? Yeah, it's crazy, yeah. It's almost like you're just feeding birds instead of your soil. So
More soil
we don't got any more soil, so we're just gonna stop with that for now. And so
So you have it
For the seed balls.
yeah, the seed balls are key right here too, because that would be, yeah, so what he just touched on was Masanobu Fukuoka teaches about these clay seed balls. And you make seed balls over your seeds, and so when you scatter them on your field, because he's all about no labor, so you just want to be tossing stuff out, the birds aren't just going to eat them off the ground, because they'll have enough time to germinate in that clay seed pellet, and so that protects it from birds too. So there's all kind of little natural farming tactics. You could look up clay seed balls or Masanobu Fukuoka seed balls online. There's all kind of recipes for them, and you can also order the clay, make the clay out of castings. I even did one time. I got some real nice like sticky castings, and made little seed balls out of those before too. And yeah, I can cover these up a little better too when we're done with class. But really right here, now we got our foundation set to the point where we could do one of two things. We could plant immediately if we have starts like this, or we can let the cover crop grow up a little bit and do its thing, and then plant these in there, depending on the size of these, or depending on your timing or where you're at in your life or whatever it may be. Because maybe you set this up, but you're just starting your seeds, and you got them in a nursery and you're waiting for them to get big, and during that time, this could grow up this high. And at that point, you would just come in here and shove them back and plant your seed and leave them, and then they'll grow up together. And then, like I said, you could use that as fertilizer as it gets older. Let some of them grow to be pollinators, you know, and just kind of play with that cover crop to be beneficial to you throughout the growing cycle, and to feed your plants and feed your soil.
Could we put mulch at this point before we put the plants in?
Yeah, so what I'm gonna do, instead of going ahead and planting these, I'm gonna finish off the process, and then we could plant some of these plants into the ground and show you guys that. But so let's see, maybe if I could get where'd my thing go? Can you go, maybe you go with one of the boys? Somebody want to go and harvest some lemongrass over there? Go with my Colo over there, and Dane will take you guys. If you have another machete too, you can use that, or a knife or anything. You could help them out too, Dane, if you want. Just need to grab me like 2 handfuls each of lemongrass. So what we're gonna do is we're gonna use that lemongrass as the top mulch, and we could also come with a little bit of wood chips, but we don't want much because we don't really want we don't want it to block the seeds from growing up at this point, you know. So we could lightly wood chip this, and then we'll throw some lemongrass on there, and then that bed will basically be done.
If you have chickens and you don't want them to scratch at it, it's a good idea to use lemongrass or bed dirt. You just top mulch your bed right after.
Nice, and they'll stay away because they don't like the scent and stuff.
The barbs.
Oh, the little barbs. Perfect, bro. Nice. Yeah, that's perfect. Maybe if we could chop it into like 4-inch sections with that saw. That should be good, Squirt. Bring that saw over here. Perfect. So what we'll do is we'll just finish it off, because at any point we can just open up a hole and stick a plant in there, close it back up. So so what I would do then if I had this is I would, you know, get it, if hopefully I had scissors or something easier than this, but can you actually go grab scissors from Oma? So basically, yeah, anyway, you're gonna get this cut up into smaller pieces and scatter it around like that.
You want me to hold it?
That don't make no sense. Let's just wait for some. Teamwork. Yeah, so at least you guys can get the idea. So, and then it's also too, it's like, it's not like you have to have lemongrass, you know, it's like I'm just showing you can grab whatever from your yard.
You want it to be a clean waste?
Not necessarily. Like we could use some of those.
Smells so good.
Yeah, right? Okay.
Yeah, 4-inch pieces. Like we could use some of these leaves. It's all about how pretty you want it too, you know. Like if you're doing it and like someone has aesthetics that they expect from a garden, then you're gonna use certain mulch, you know. But if you're just like a roots man or woman in the hills, like you could just grab anything you want and just start, you know, and you're not too concerned with the visual. So you get the job done with some carbon and some old leaves or whatever, you know. And couple rules though, it's like you're not gonna throw honu grass on here, right? Because then it's gonna take hold. You're not gonna go cut cane grass like this and expect the same result. You're gonna get a bunch of seeds in there, you know. So nothing with seeds, nothing with the taproot, the easily, you know, they don't have the root. What do you call those little root sites, you know, up and down the. See how beautiful that is, like, and then just imagine we'll just do it. Plug a couple of these in just to show you how sweet it all looks in the end.
So Roger, besides how beautiful it is, what exactly is its function? What's its function?
Of the lemongrass?
Yeah.
So the lemongrass is acting as a mulch. So number one, it's gonna keep weed seeds out. Number two, it's gonna hold moisture. Those are pretty much the main things, you know. Number three, remember we said all soil is covered in nature, right? So we're speeding up the process of nature, because if we don't cover it, he will, right? If we don't cover it, it'll get covered with something that someone else decides, you know, the creator decides to put there, not you. So you decide what you want to go there, and that's why we're doing this, and that's plenty, guys.
Yeah.
Thanks, bro. This is just some green, some chard that I'm planting here. And you can see, you can just make some rows of chard, whatever you want to grow. And you'll like you could keep it one thing if that's your bag, you know, and like you want those aesthetics, or you could grow several things and make that biodiversity. But the key is, like, we don't need diversity in here if we have diversity around here, you know. So it's okay that I grow just chard in here, because I got lemongrass borders, I got lavender growing on the edges, you know, I got a tree, I got shade, I got habitat, you know. So that's just up to you what you're gonna want. If anybody wants to go ahead, you can, any of these greens you can plug in here and just kind of maybe whatever feels right to you, go ahead and do it. There's some lemon balm.
Cassava here?
I brought cassava, yeah, I brought some. So,
Are you planting the taro?
we could plant taro, but I'm probably this bed's gonna be a taro bed back here is what my vision was.
Or deeper bed.
Yeah. Yeah, let's just go ahead. We'll plant up this bed with what we got here. You guys can step in here, just make a little hole, plant it, give it a blessing. It's all good. And what we're gonna do next though is I'm gonna show you how to keep going outward with fertility and also mitigate weeds. in the process. So after we get that planted, we'll go ahead and move on to the next step.
You want to plant these two, or are you going to save them?
Oh wow. No, we'll just do these ones for now.
Roger.
Just to keep the class flowing.
Yep. Probably.
I mean, we could throw them in, bro.
Right?
Go for it.
There's got to be some space for it.
Yeah, let's go. Anybody else wants to put a plant in the ground? Go ahead and just whatever feels right. This is the class garden. It's a deep enough pocket of soil, you can go ahead and plant in that one, but I'm pretty sure I need to add some soil. Or if we run out of space, we can plant over there. The cassava and stuff though, we'll save that for now. Actually, that'll be pretty cool, bro. You can leave that. That'll work, that'll work.
That's the cassava, yeah.
Yeah, that's the cassava. You guys can take some of that home, and that's just how we just stuck it in the ground. Each one of the sites where the little leaves are coming out will be root sites.
So that's like,
Yeah, and it's a root vegetable. It's just gonna
couple different kinds of lettuce.
What kind of carrot?
I feel like, does it matter?
See how awesome that was? All you need is like 30 people and you guys could do it that fast. No, but for real though, you know, one day of your life and this is planted, you know? And you check on it for 5 minutes a day of your life and you're eating, you know? And I just wanted to show you guys how easy all this stuff is and how really just basic it is. And once you see something and you've done it, now it's like riding a bike, you know? So, and compared to the old model of if we would have just brought potting soil in here and threw it in here, you know, and compared to what we just did, those little steps, those 4 or 5 extra steps is what's gonna give us success. What's gonna make it fun and fruitful and make us wanna do it more. So now we're gonna continue, and like I said, what we're gonna do now is we're gonna bring fertility outwards from these living and giving beds, and we're gonna continue it into this whole area. So what we can do is we're gonna bring this county mulch. Ideally, it would be fresher. This one's already broken down. It's almost like soil, but we'll just show you the gist of it. And what we can do now as a class is we can dump out this, and we'll just try to focus on this area because I don't know how much material we have. And we're gonna cover the cardboard with county green waste. So that's the next step. This one is all county green waste right here. No, that's chips, but we'll put those on next. So if we can just, we'll focus on this. Yeah, this area here. That'll be the focus. Spread that out. We want it like about 1 inch to 2 inches. I think we're gonna go with that one next. So after we get that spread out all around, we're gonna wood chip it in place. Uncle, don't hurt your back, bro. And yeah, we'll just bring it right to the edge of this rock so we know we have enough. We'll stop right at the edge of this rock, wrap it around the sides of that brown one, bring it around the green one, and bring it around the front of this. Yeah. You're gonna grab a bucket, and you could bring some of that mulch up here.
Bring it out a little bit more this way.
Bring a little of that thickness over on this side. There's lots of worms in that already, if you guys could see the worms. And that's gonna prevent these grasses too. The grasses that are already living in this lawn, we're gonna prevent them from starting to climb and creep in under our beds and eat our fertility.
Are we gonna put wood chips now?
Yeah, as soon as these guys are done. Just get that thinned out.
What kind of worms are those?
Those are all just native worms in there that would be naturally coming out of the ground. There could be a lot of red wigglers in there just because of having them on your farm. they're like constantly moving in and out of the worm bin, you know, and inoculating other areas where they could be digesters, you know. So, you know, like sometimes I'll see in here, I'll just see red wigglers chilling in here, you know.
Right.
You can definitely tell they're not native worms.
Right here. He's not native.
Well, and the red wigglers,
That
can they
one's
survive on regular soil?
Yeah, right.
They like got broken down.
What's that?
Can they survive in regular soil, or do they need to be in compost?
No, I mean, they will survive, but they won't favor it. You know, they'll end up leaving to go eat something, you know.
Okay.
But if you're keeping a layer of green waste on top, they're always got something to eat, so they'll stay in that. Composting worms, red wigglers like to be in that 1 to 3 inch layer where your native worms are diggers, you know. They're like tilling deep and stuff.
Okay.
So do we got enough to ring around this?
You probably harvest in that bucket over there too.
Okay. If it is,
You're gonna harvest them from that.
or it's all good. I mean, we got plenty of wood chips, so I just want you guys to understand the concept. We're getting like a nitrogen-rich green waste on the bottom, and then we're gonna come with our carbon-rich wood chips on top. So now we can just dump the rest of these wood chips over the top of this. It'll prevent it from being muddy. It's gonna prevent weeds from coming in, and it'll make it walkable and nice.
So the nitrogen rich is the first layer.
Right.
And why are we putting that down?
Really the point of this is multi-points, like number one being that we're basically spreading, we're making it like a living environment instead of it just being this bed with grass.
So you're not going to plant anything on there, but
No, this is just our path.
Soils.
Yeah. And it's also, if you have fresh, I mean these wood chips are kind of broken down, but if they're fresh, it would look like a nice walkable path. And once these dry out on top, it'll look like that again, you know? And so it's 1 part beautification, 1 part fertility, 1 part weed blockage is a huge reason why we're doing all this, is so weeds don't just grow all up in our garden, and we actually have...
The nitrogen actually encourages the soil, but this blocks the weeds?
Right.
This layer blocks the weeds.
Right.
This is carbon, did you say carbon rich?
Carbon rich. So anything made of wood or dried chips or dried grass is basically carbon.
And what the nitrogen rich are the leaves?
Are the greens, you know?
I'll take a picture.
Anything soft, even coffee wood could be considered like a nitrogen source.
And when you go to county waste, do they separate them between nitrogen rich and carbon rich, or
No. It's all mixed together. All right.
So you need to buy these chips somewhere.
Let's just bring the rest of that and finish this hoop out here in front, just so it all kind of connects and looks like we finished something. Oh, perfect. Yeah, well, we can drag that over right where my Colo's standing and dump it all right, or actually right where Adonijah is. These are all from my house.
Oh yeah.
The ohia that got
These are all ohia chips, yeah. Which are hardwood, so they'll take a while to break down.
Do you think if you were sensitive, you would feel like you could, in a vegetable like ganja, like that has some ohia in it, energy, has some ohia flavor in it?
Sick, that's a good one. I don't know, I mean, I know with the fermented plant juices that you can impart terpenes onto things and stuff like that, you know, or enhance other things terpenes by signaling them with other terpenes.
So does ohia have a property that activates certain things?
I mean, not necessarily, but you could always entertain those things in your mind, because it's all possible, and if you thought about it, then it must be something, you know what I mean, or else why'd you think about it? Okay, cool, yeah. I was just gonna kind of straighten some of these out. All right, so you guys kind of see how it all worked? Yeah. And can continue to work and continue.
Water?
Yeah, we could water this in now just to kind of seal it all up. But yeah, it's pretty much done though. I mean, you know, more or less done. I'm gonna do Kalo in that back patch. We could come in here and, did I bring a pickaxe? Yeah, go grab the pickaxe. I'll just show you, I'll make a little border of lemongrass just to show you how easy that is too. And any questions about this whole setup here? Anybody have any questions or comments? Is all good?
What is the purpose of around it?
So
Cover crops in this, or just?
So really this is gonna be a weed-free and plant-free zone. So you know, maybe like you might have seen like a landscaper or somebody like that wants to beautify their garden, and they put like a bunch of stone and stuff like that and a bunch of weed mat around. Well, instead of approaching it like that, like with weed mat and with stones and different stuff you bought from the store and you imported, are you leaving? Instead of the weed mat, which is plastic, we're gonna use cardboard. Instead of stones, which were imported, we're gonna use wood chips as far as the beautification goes and keeping the weeds out and the pathways clear. So we're just gonna, it might be a little more work overall because we're gonna have to re-wood chip it eventually. But all this stuff, like within a couple rounds, you'll be able to dig all this fertility up and add it as mulch to your bed and re-wood chip your paths. But all this broken down, walked on and microbial filled wood chips will then be your mulch layer for the next time. So everything you're doing it has a purpose and a cycle to it. Nothing's waste, nothing's a byproduct, and nothing's purchased unnecessarily. So those are some of the reasons why you go with this method, you know? Yeah. Any other questions? So I'll just show you real quick. I'll plug in right here. Just a little row of lemongrass. Adonijah, grab me, where'd that lemongrass go? Lemongrass. Yeah, you could break me off like 10 pieces. Root chunks, yeah. And I'm just making holes through the cardboard. You know, I'm doing it in this row so I can still utilize all the mulch for the weeds and everything. Start tossing me a few of those. So these are easy. You can, where'd those scissors go? You gave them back. It's all good. So you can just cut those tops off so that they're not just like flopping over and you don't see a bunch of death in between it regenerating, which can kind of be like not so appealing and kind of disheartening when you see things dying as they regenerate. But just rest assured that will survive, and that's going to be a bush like those ones over there in just a matter of time. And so what this is going to do is, if say this was like another grassy area or a bunch of weeds or a jungle, it's going to make me a borderline that's going to signal to those plants to stay away, and it's also a anti-parasite, anti-bad bug, all that kind of stuff. So it'll keep pests away also, being the properties of the lemongrass. And yeah, we'll just use those to our advantage, you know. Get it right underneath the cardboard. Yeah, that's plenty of lemongrass. So you guys get that kind of idea. I'm just gonna continue this border, and then what I'll do is I'll come around the backside maybe to help hold this wall in place. Maybe plant some vetiver back here to hold that wall and just kind of make habitat. Wind block, road exhaust blockage. You know, we could Maybe throw a couple potted bamboos or something, or potted palms along here to maybe, if we wanted to make it a better environment for the customers or whatever, and you can just like beautify it from there. You could plant pansies or whatever kind of anthuriums or something in between, whatever you feel to beautify it. You know, utilize, get your food out of it, get your beauty out of it. You know, my mom can make tea with these, so there's all kind of like secondary things you can do, and everything's not just for one reason. So yeah, any questions about all that? Which one?
Bamboo.
Well, there's several varieties of bamboo, and a lot of them will spread and be invasive, so be careful planting bamboo.
What would be the best as like a sound barrier and
Like, yeah, I would say, and I would keep them in pots and just kind of line them up along the wall. Bamboo or palms, right.
and pots because you're worried that they might spread.
Either that or that they might, yeah, like spill over onto the road, or all kind of different reasons, you know.
Well, I would have thought if you did some bamboo up here, you kind of block the view of the building.
And that's another thing too. Do you want to block that, or do you want the privacy? So that's just a matter of the owners of the building.
The ocean, yes, but the building.
Right. So yeah, that's about it in there. Any more questions? No questions about this process? You guys feeling confident that you could do this on your own? Yeah, the chips are good, and also the branches, you could build up the sides of your beds and kind of even weave them together. You could even, if you have really skinny guava, you could, like a really cool thing I've seen in Africa before is they took some like nice thicker guava, like steaks, drove them into a ground in a circle, like maybe every 2 or 3 feet, and then they took and they weaved it and made a circle on the ground, and that's a living pot. Adonijah, grab that smart pot out of that black pot over there, and it's breathing, right? It has all the air coming in, and it's all natural, and then you do this same fill-up technique in that naturally weaved pot. So this is like a Babylon version of that, you know? So you can just show the people, hold it up. So this is what they call a smart pot, but we call them dumb pots. And it's just felt. So it's breathable. And like I said, if you just want to make a garden tomorrow and you don't got all this space and all this material, but you do have access to potting soil and stuff, you could just start going right away, you know?
Do we need to let the guava dry out at all, or is it just fresh?
Since you're not using it in a growing system and you're using it more as support, you don't have to wait for that to dry out or anything. If you were to chip it and want to like chip a certain food source bed or something, you might want to think about, I don't know, I think guava is actually pretty clean, you know? But like how we were talking about the
Christmas berry.
Christmas berry, you don't want to use that on your food or anything.
What would not like ultimately Christmas berry you can over a certain process it'll break down and stuff like that, but what would like that would you not recommend, and what would you recommend?
So just like a general rule of thumb, like just think about like acidity. Think about how pungent the wood is. Think about if there's like an oozing thing coming out of it, and just kind of use your intuition and stuff first of all. And then like hardwoods are so great, you know, they're so good for fungal. They last a long time. They're clean. They don't stink, you know, so you gotta like just utilize your human bio-instrument to tap into those things. But just right off the top, like you're not gonna wanna mulch with eucalyptus. You're not gonna wanna mulch with Christmas berry. Look under the trees. Is everything dead? And not just from the shade, but from the vibration and the acidity of the leaves and the tannins in the tree. Because that's really like tannins are the things that cause an unfavorable environment, you know, and those are the kind of trees you could use sparingly in the very bottom of a Hugo mound. Sparingly, because by the time they break down, they'll become usable. But you wouldn't want them on the top or the chips in a Hugo mound. Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah. Any more questions?
So we have a bunch of ironwood that we're going to be taking down.
That's another one that you're careful of.
Would it be okay to put it underneath the Christmas berry since it is kind of...
That could possibly be something good as long as that's still favorable for the mushrooms to grow. you know. You just got to kind of experiment with it, but yeah, you know, good thoughts. Anything else? Okay, if there's no other questions, oh yeah, one more question.
Say you already set up a bed, you got the junk dirt in there. How do you get it good fast without, you know, taking everything out? Like I already.
So what you're gonna do is just go back to that lesson of the 1/3 blend, and kind of just start. What do I already have there, and what could I make it mimic that 1/3 blend that we talked about, and get that biochar in there, get the calcium carbonate in there, and then inoculate it with a compost tea or an IMO4 or worm castings or all of those. You know, do the cover crop, do the mulch, and it'll start bringing it back to life. And you'll start seeing worms in there. And most potting soils devoid of organic matter, or most soils in general need organic matter. So you could always add more mulch to anything, really, you know, or compost, I mean, to anything. So I got a few plants here. There's a lemongrass you guys can take. I've only got a few taros, but I do have the lehua taro. If anybody really needs a taro on their land, there's a few back here. A few lemongrasses and a few cassavas over there. Next class, I promised to bring more starts. I didn't have time to get them together this morning or last night. And then also, if you didn't pay, there's a bucket right over there for donations right next to the books. And you could just slide your tuition in there. There's also papers if you want to become a member. And that's just, it basically makes the classes like half price. And all I'm asking for is a 3-month livocation to the school. And that just helps pay the rent and get materials for each class. Pays for the food for the classes and stuff like that. So yeah, the membership's a cool thing. Save money and help support. And that's, again, paperwork's up there for that. Come grab some starts. Take some pictures of the 9 core elements. Next month, be ready for KNF and cannabis, KNF basics, and composting and worm bins. So, right on. Give thanks. Are you out here? Okay, love you.